need it for right now, but you can give it back later. Stole my pen. I don't know if that's his mommy or his daddy teaching him. Well, he did it while he was with Papa. This morning we're in Matthew chapter 1. We'll be in Matthew 1 and Matthew 2 this morning. I want to say thank you for allowing us to go to see Rachel's side of the family for Thanksgiving. Thank you all for that. Y'all need to pray harder than my wife because she prays for no snow. So God brought it to you because she went out of town, apparently. So pray hard. Pray harder than her, I guess. I don't know. We didn't have to worry about it. We left, and then it came, and we came back, and it was gone. So it was good. But also, Rachel's sister got engaged while we were there for Thanksgiving, and so grateful she got to be there to see that. So that was cool. It was enjoyable. We had a good time with our family. So thank you for allowing us to do that. Just a heads up for this week and next week, we're going to look at really the kind of perspectives of Christmas. So Matthew is mainly focused. Matthew and Luke both have the Christmas account, but mainly Matthew is focused on Joseph, if you've ever noticed that, and Luke is mainly focused on Mary, if you've ever noticed that. All right, so that's what we're going to look at this week in Matthew, mainly focusing on what we can learn about Joseph and learn from him, and then next week what we learn from Mary. All right, the week after that will be the 17th. That's our kids' play, and so that's what we'll have that morning. The week after that will be Christmas Eve, and so we'll be out of town for that week, so brace for snow, I guess. We'll see. So we will have worship that morning at normal time, I believe, but no Sunday school that day. And so we'll have that, and then the following week we'll just be back to normal, and that'll be the week that Blaze Clem will be preaching here that morning. All right. Matthew 1. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen this or heard of this, but there are people and theologians, whoever, came up with some major themes for the books of the Bible, all right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're all the Gospels, but they have different themes. And so different things they seem to focus on, right? Because they're not carbon copies of each other. Matthew, Mark, and Luke mainly cover the same stuff. You know, the book of John is 90% unique. The book of John, 90% of it is not in the other Gospels. All right, so they are different. But Matthew, the theme is described as Jesus as king. In Mark, it's described as Jesus as servant. In Luke, it is Jesus as Son of Man. And John, it is Jesus as Son of God. So John will focus on his deity. You know, from John 1:1, right? In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. In Luke, it's the focus on the Son of Man, which you see that in really, I think maybe why he focuses on Mary, because of his humanity, the mother that brought him into the world, the humanity that he endured. Jesus as servant and how his servant leadership and his attitude and the example he set for his apostles in the book of Mark. Then Matthew, Jesus as king, that he is in charge. He's the one that gets to rule. He has the rightful place on the throne of David. And above all, he's going to rule everything. So not just Jerusalem, but the whole world, all of creation. All right, Matthew 1:1. So there's 3 points this morning if you're taking notes. 3 main things I think we can see this morning. The first one is this. Joseph's lineage gives Jesus claim to be the rightful king. All right? Joseph's lineage gives Jesus the claim to be the rightful king. All right, Matthew 1:1-2 says this, the record of the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, and so on and so on and so on. All right? So we see there's a whole list. There is one section I want us to focus on for time. We're not going to read all these names. But it's interesting, all the lineage that's there. But look at verse 5. Salmon was the father of Boaz by Rahab. You'll see in this genealogy, he refers to the fathers, right? So the fathers passed down, all right, the genealogy. And so it'll focus on the fathers. In a few instances, it lists the mothers for a reason. You remember who Rahab was? She was a Gentile woman in Jericho that hid the spies and said, hey, I see what your God's doing. While everybody's mocking your God, I think he's the real deal. And I think he's going to give up our incredibly fortified city to you, and I want to be safe. So you take care of me. And remember what they said, right? Yeah, you stay here. Your whole family stays here. You'll be okay. If you're outside of this building, you're up for grabs. You're not going to be safe. You're going to be slaughtered like everybody else. And she believed God. And she got to be in the lineage of Jesus. You also see, and then Boaz was the father of Obed by Ruth. You know the story of Ruth from the book of Ruth. Another Gentile woman, a Moabite woman that, what was the mother's son, married her son, and then the husband dies, the sons die. Ruth and Orpah were there, and she said, hey, you can go. No, we won't go. No, you can go back to your families. And the one goes back, and Ruth says, no. Your family would be my family, your God, my God. And I'm going to go. And she showed herself faithful. Because of that, I think God specifically has Matthew mention 2 Gentile women that are in the lineage of Jesus. So guess what? If Gentiles can be saved today, they could have been saved in the Old Testament too. That's what some people get wrong. You could be a faithful follower of Christ even if you weren't an Israelite. If you chose that God at the time, you could be part of Israel. And there was a way for you to do that. All right? But God specifically includes him here. You see Jesse, the father of David the king, David, the father of Solomon, by Bathsheba, who's the wife of Uriah, and so on and so on and so on. Look at verse 16. Jacob was the father of Joseph, and here's how it differentiates again, right? Joseph is the father of Jesus? No, because we know he's born of a virgin. He's not his physical father, right? Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary. It doesn't say father of Jesus. Husband of Mary, by whom Jesus was born. She's his mom. She was the host for him. He's fully God, but also fully man. Joseph was not his biological dad, or else he would have the taint of sin. But he didn't, because he didn't have a biological dad. He was supernaturally the Son of God, right? By whom Jesus was born, who is called the Messiah. All right, the Messiah, the one that had been prophesied for generations. Genesis 12, verse 1 tells this. And the Lord said unto Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives, and from your father's house, to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation. And I will bless you, and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you. And the one who curses you, I will curse. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. And Jesus is the fulfillment of that. That all the families everywhere will be blessed because of what Jesus did. Jesus came out of Israel, out of the lineage of Abram. The genealogy establishes Jesus' claim to the throne of David by being a legal heir of Joseph, that he's part of his family. It's interesting that God chose a man whose family line enabled Jesus to rightfully claim to be king of Israel. God specifically chose Joseph, had Joseph be in this lineage so Jesus could say, they couldn't say, oh, you don't have a claim. No, my father, Joseph here, I'm part of his family. It gives me that right and that claim. That's not the only reason God chose Joseph. Number 2, Joseph was a man of high character. Joseph, we will see, is a man of high character. And when do you know the character of somebody? Not when things go good. You know their character when things go bad, when things are difficult. You see what they are. And that's what we'll see in Joseph. Look at Matthew 1 and starting verse 18. Look at verse 18 and 19. Now the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, of course, before they came together, she was found to be with child by the Holy Spirit. And Joseph, her husband, being a righteous man and not wanting to disgrace her, planned to send her away secretly. Joseph and Mary were betrothed, and maybe many of you didn't know this. Betrothal for them was not like our engagement. Our engagement, you can be broken easily, right? Theirs was not. Theirs was a legally binding contract. It was a formal contractual agreement between two families. It was not just get on one knee, I said yes, yay, and then a month later, I'm tired now, or I realize I made a mistake, I'm done. It wasn't like that. All right? This is a big deal. A formal divorce was required to end the betrothal. Also, part of the reason you have a betrothal is so you can also make sure that they're not getting married because they're pregnant. Because the betrothal was usually a year or longer. That's usually how it worked out. Place yourself in Joseph's position for a moment. You know the child is not yours. We have not been together. So if you're pregnant, that means you were with somebody else. Think about that for a moment, what that would do to you. Would you yell and belittle Mary and end the betrothal? Do you take, what's his right? Do you take her in front of everybody? Let everybody know what she did? That the marriage is off because this woman is a harlot. This woman is a cheater. This woman slept around on me. And I was an upstanding right guy. I did everything right. And look what she did. So I want all y'all to know what she did. He could have done that. But he doesn't. Or maybe do the right thing like Joseph did. Try to look, what can I do? This ain't my child and I ain't up for this. But I love her. I care about her. How can I end this while being respectful for her and not make a spectacle of her in front of everybody? How can I do this quietly? How can I take care of myself while also not unnecessarily parading her in front of everybody? That I do care for her deeply. If I put myself in his shoes, if me and Rachel were, when we were betrothed, all right, our engagement, and then she becomes, oh, you're knocked up. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm like, well, let's try to do this quiet. I don't know. I imagine I know I'd be deeply hurt. I'd be ticked off. I'd be angry. If it's me, I'd want to know why she did this. I'd want to know who the father is. Who's this guy? In my mind, I'm thinking, you know what? She didn't care about my feelings. So I might be thinking about, why should I care about your feelings? Let's let everybody know what kind of person you are. Maybe I'm thinking, you know what? Let's let her face the consequences of her choice. You made your bed, now lie in it. There's no mention that's what Joseph thought about doing. He wasn't vindictive. He didn't want to get revenge. He wanted to do what he needed to do, but as quietly as possible, because he cared for her and loved her. He loved Mary, but he didn't seek revenge. For me, that's an extremely high character. To put yourself in that back seat and care about her feelings when, think about this for a moment. All he knows is, I've been done wrong. She said she loved me. We're in this agreement. We're going to build our lives together, and this is what you do. And what he thinks is, he thinks about her feelings. Really not his own. Man of high character. I don't know what I would do in this situation. I don't know if I'd have that high character. He didn't have a spiteful attitude. Joseph was a man of high character, even when he believed he had been done wrong. Look at verse 20. So Joseph is a man of high character. He's thinking, how can I end this while being respectful for her? But when he had considered this, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. For the child who has been conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son. You should call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. Now all this took place to fulfill what we read before, what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Behold, the virgin shall be with child, and shall bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which translated means God with us. God made sure to send his angel to Joseph in a dream to explain to him what was going on and the role that God wanted Joseph to play. God didn't wait or force Mary to go tell him what was going on and to try to explain it all. Joseph was like, hey, you're pregnant? There's only one way that can happen, so we're done. God didn't put that on Mary. God put it on himself to say, I will explain things to Joseph. And to his credit, we're going to see in a moment, Joseph believed God. Joseph loved God, obeyed God. He was a man of high character. In Isaiah 7:14, this is what it says. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. So that's what he quoted right here is Isaiah 7:14. So what does Joseph do after receiving these instructions? Does he have a conversation with God? Does he argue with God? Does he seek, hey, is there another way to do this? Look what he does in verse 24. And Joseph awoke from his sleep and did as the angel of the Lord commanded him, and took Mary as his wife. But kept her a virgin until she gave birth to a son, and he called his name Jesus. Joseph did what God commanded. There's no record of an argument. No, there's no mention of hesitation. It says he woke up and then he did what God told him to do. He didn't ask for clarifying questions. You think about, when we look in the book of Luke, there is John the Baptist, right? Zechariah and Elizabeth. Zechariah said, how will I know this happens, right? And the angel says, well, since you need clarifying, since you need some proof, how about you don't speak until the child's born, right? Joseph don't do that here. He doesn't say, God, I need a sign. I've got a fleece over here. He doesn't do any of that, right? He says, God showed me, I'm going to do it. He obeyed God without hesitation. Think about it this way as well. He willingly obeyed God even though his reputation would likely take a hit because they had a child born so soon into their betrothal. Think about that. It's not just her, it's him too, that had this stigma. That people will be like, people will be talking. They'll be questioning. He willingly gave up his good name that he had built so far in his life. He willingly gave that up to obey God. He was a man who obeyed the commands of God. He was a man who was willing to be questioned by others, but he was more willing to be proven trustworthy by God. I want you to think today. Put yourself in his shoes. All right, you're not in that same situation, but could God trust you just the same? Can God trust you to obey him? He could trust Joseph to obey him. Saying, oh, I'll do this, and then doing it, right, are two totally different things. People talk, a lot of people, everybody talks, but few actually back it up with their actions. So what is it like for Joseph to obey God? It's pretty easy, right? Just do it. Just go for it. Well, hold on. Number 3. This is the last one this morning. Joseph willingly followed God's leading even when it was difficult. Joseph willingly followed God's leading even when it was difficult. All right? Now saying, take Mary as your wife, it's not yours, it's from the Spirit of God, it is God, it's God's son. Okay. But now he has to live it out. Now he has to walk through difficult circumstances because he chose to obey God. And he's going to have to choose to obey God over and over and over again. Look at chapter 2, verse 13. So we know the wise men come in chapter 2. Now for time's sake, we're not going to go through all that because we're kind of focusing on Joseph. They come and Herod says, hey, I want to worship this king too. Tell me where he is. You come back, tell me where he is, so I can go worship him, right? Because he wants to eliminate the threat. They go a different way. And then we know that Herod, verse 12, having been warned by God, these wise men in a dream not to return to Herod, the Magi left for their own country by another way. All right? Verse 13. Now when they had gone, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, again another dream, saying, get up, Take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt. Remain there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him." So Joseph got up. Again, what happens? He just gets up. No arguing, no discussing, no back and forth with God for the angel in a dream, nothing. It just got up, took the child and his mother while it was still night, left for Egypt. He remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." Now in Egypt, they say there's probably about 1 million Jews in Egypt at this time. So it's not like there's no Jews there. Hosea 11:1 is what he quotes here. Hosea 11:1 says, "When Israel was a youth, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son." So that's the fulfillment it says here, that this is a fulfillment right now here of that. What do you think for a moment? Growing up, I moved a lot. With my dad, he worked for Piccadilly Cafeterias in, I don't know if there were many places, but they were in Texas. He got transferred as a manager over there, multiple places. So I was born in Chattanooga, moved to Louisiana where my mom's family is, and then my dad got a job with Piccadilly, and then we lived in Temple, Texas, Amarillo, Texas, Waco, Texas. He got a job, he was tired of them, he went with Shoney's, moved to Jacksonville, North Carolina. We were there for a year and a half, I think, somewhere around there. And then my dad decided, hey, I want to finish my college education where I started. I want to take my family back to Chattanooga. He did. He never finished, but I finished there, and my sisters finished through there, or at least one of them did. And so, ends up, I've moved quite a bit. All right, you know how many of y'all have lived in, let's say, 3 different houses? Anybody? 3 different houses. All right, maybe a 4th, maybe a 3rd in here. Right? A lot of y'all have lived the same place. That's wonderful. Guess what? And we lived in a trailer, all right, a double wide, for years. And so what would happen? We'd pack some stuff up, and some stuff we'd just make sure it couldn't move or wasn't breakable. And then what they did is they hooked it up on a trailer, and they moved it to our trailer park where we were, in Temple, Amarillo, and Waco. That's what we had. All right, so I remember those days. Think about moving. It's maybe some people like it. Probably majority or nobody or everybody doesn't like it because it's a pain. You incur extra costs. You got to register your car. You got to put up money to maybe get into an apartment or a house or something. You put first and last month's rent maybe. You got to put the water on, the electricity, and do all these things. And packing is a pain. I hate cleaning. I really hate packing. That gets on your nerves, right? Then you realize, I've got too much stuff. What kind of idiot has all this stuff? Then you move, and guess what? If you have to move again, I have a bunch of stuff again. I can't get rid of stuff, right? So it's a pain. Here he goes in the middle of the night, and I'm just going to go to another country. No mention that he knows anybody there. No mention that he's got funds ready to help him out. No mention of, you think about the logistics of what he would have to do. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever had to move without warning, without provision, without thinking ahead and planning? He just did it right then. God said go, he went. I've got a new family. Got a bad reputation probably. We have Jesus. We have to go to Egypt. Okay. Joseph obeyed by faith. God, I trust you. No mention of where will we stay, how will we eat, how I'll provide for my family. No, it is, he just got up and went. Joseph is a man of faith, a man of high character, a man of obedient faith. Look at verse 16. So he goes to Egypt. Then when Herod saw that he had been tricked by the Magi, he became very enraged, sent and slew all the male children who were in Bethlehem and all its vicinity from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the Magi. Then what had been spoken through Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. Verse 18 says what? A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning. Rachel weeping for her children, as she refused to be comforted because they were no more. So we know Jesus was born in Bethlehem from verse 1 of chapter 2. We know the significance of that. Maybe you remember that is where they would raise the sheep that would be meant for sacrifice. The majority of them would be in Bethlehem. So that's one of the reasons why he was born in Bethlehem, because he is pictured as, right, the Lamb of God. So then from there, he's got to go to Egypt to escape Herod. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever thought, why did all those little innocent little babies have to die? Those little toddlers have to die. God allowed Herod to kill innocent children. He did. God could have stopped Herod. He could have killed Herod right then, right there. But he doesn't. God, with his own son, says go to Egypt and flee. That's how he protects his own son, but allows many others to die. You know what? God often allows tragedies to happen in this world. There is suffering, there is poverty, there is evil, and there is death. God allows, you want to write this down, put this in your brain. Because you need to have this in the forefront of your mind as you go through life. God allows the effects of sin in our world to affect our lives. Had somebody close to you die? Had somebody close to you go through hard times? We've been praying for baby Chandler. Baby Chandler deserved to be in the NICU and all these things happen? No. But God allowed it. God could take that baby. Or he could allow that baby to suffer for the rest of her life. Or it could be a short time and just prove God would be good and bring her healing. God's in control. But he allows the effects of sin to affect our lives in this world, in this life. And that is a truth that every single follower of Jesus has to wrestle with and accept. If you refuse to accept this truth, I'm just going to say there's a very good chance you're going to abandon your faith at some time. Because you just think, I can't deal with this. Why would God do this? Why would God allow this? He's God. He can do what he wants. Pastor, why would he? I don't know. Sometimes you see, boy, God brought this person to salvation. Or they really brought this family together through this. Sometimes you see results. And sometimes you got no clue. That's God's will. We have to view God as sovereign, as totally in control over all things. If you refuse to do that, then you limit his control to what? Only what benefits you. God, you're in control because this is so good. You will try to reject his control over the things that hurt you. Now, don't have me say that God causes these things. Sometimes God brings things, but you see the book of Job, right? God allowed Satan to bring horrible, horrible, hard things to Joseph's life. God does not tempt us. God does not bring evil upon us. Sometimes God causes things. Sometimes he merely allows the world, our choices, to come about, natural occurrences from that. And sometimes he allows Satan to work things out and to bring hard things, to bring evil things. He might not be the cause of it, but he allows it. It is not that God always causes pain in our lives, but it is the fact that he always allows whatever ends up coming our way. There is absolutely nothing that comes to you or I that God did not say, okay. Because at any time, he could put a stop to it. You need to realize that. And here's an instance of it that God allowed however many countless innocent children to die while he saved his son. That is the truth. Then when we get to heaven, maybe we'll say, God, what happened with that? Here, I want to explain you some things. And he'll explain us why he does what he does, why he allows what he allows. But it is true. Look at verse 19. But when Herod died. Now, I have if you want a timeline of the birth of Christ, I have a sheet out there that's a timeline on our table out there in the foyer. So if you want that, feel free to grab that on the way out if it helps you to think about the timeline. Because it does me, because it is confusing. If you have to go to Matthew and Luke and try to figure them both out, it becomes confusing. There's a lot of stuff seems like jumbled up together, okay? But what they think is that Herod probably late 4 BC or early 3 BC is probably when he dies. All right? A little time before that, he ordered the killing of the boys 2 years old and under. Many think it might have been a year they were gone. A lot of people think it might have been just a few months. And that's all that they were in Egypt for. And then all that happened, and then they came back. But whatever it was, Herod dies. An angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt. And he says, all right, get up. Take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel. For those who sought the child's life are dead. So Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in place of his father Herod, he's afraid to go there. Then after being warned by God in a dream, he left for the regions of Galilee and came and lived in a city called Nazareth. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophets. He should be called a Nazarene. So Herod dies. God tells Joseph in a dream, it's safe to go back home, right? And then he says, look at verse 23, it's something interesting. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophets. Not a prophet. He quotes from Hosea 11:1, earlier, out of Egypt I called my son. But here he just says the prophets. Why? Because there is no prophecy that tells the Messiah will be in Nazareth. All right? There's no prophecy that says that in Scripture. That's why Matthew probably mentions it was from the prophets, from the Scriptures. All right, as a totality, as a whole, not from one prophet or one passage. So this means, there's a couple thoughts of what this means. It could mean this comes from a prophecy that came from a verbal prophecy that's not written down. Or it could be an allusion to something else. All right, so I doubt it is a verbal prophecy that stood the test of time that came through this. But the thing that does make sense is what Barnes says about this. He says, the character of the people of Nazareth was such that they were proverbially despised and condemned. John 1:46 and John 7:52. To come from Nazareth, therefore, or to be a Nazarene, was the same as to be despised or to be esteemed of low birth. Whereas they don't respect you, you're just a nothing. To be a root out of a dry ground, he says, having no form or comeliness. This was what had been predicted by all the prophets. So when Matthew says that the prophecies were fulfilled, his meaning very likely was probably the predictions of the prophets that the Messiah would be of a low and despised condition and would be rejected. Those were fully accomplished in his being an inhabitant of Nazareth and despised as such. If you remember, which disciple, one of the disciples, right, when they came and said, hey, come see the Messiah, Jesus from Nazareth. Can anything good come from Nazareth? Right? Their assumption is Nazareth is a backwater place that nothing good comes from. It's just know-nothing people. You don't, if you're important or you want to be worth anything, you're not born there, you certainly don't stay there. All right? That's their thought. That's where Jesus came from. So his description fits the prophecy in Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53:1 says this, who has believed our message? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, like a root out of parched ground. And he has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we did not esteem him. If you remember also, we know Joseph is around when Jesus is 12, and they're traveling for the Passover, and Jesus stays discussing things with the the religious leaders at the time, and they are leaving, right? They go a day's journey. Where's Jesus? Oh, he's not with anybody. Let's go back. And they look for him. 3 days later, they find him, right? We know that. After that instance, there is no more mention of Joseph. We have no idea about him. We do know that at the time of Jesus' ministry, his mother's alone, right? On the cross, he says, John, your mother, right? He doesn't say, hey, my dad will take care of her. Nope, his dad's not around. So either he left his family, which I think is highly unlikely, given his character. Most likely thing, what most people assume, is he probably died. God probably took his father. And it might be one of those where he is acquainted with grief like we are. That even Jesus' own earthly father wasn't guaranteed long life. We don't know what happened to him, but that's just the most logical conclusion, probably passed away. Joseph was used by God to be the earthly father and caretaker for the Son of God. And God used Joseph's lineage to fulfill his plan. God used Joseph's high character and love for Mary to fulfill his plan. God used Joseph's willing obedience to fulfill prophecy and to protect the Son of God. How many times does he have to move? Right? He's got a census. He's got to go from where he lives to Bethlehem. And then he's got to flee into Egypt. And then he's got to go back, and things are dangerous. He's not really sure, so he's going to go to Nazareth and live there again. So in the early days of his life, Joseph moved around a lot. And he was faithful just to do whatever God directed him to do. Joseph is a tremendous example of what faithfulness and obedience looks like in the life of a follower of God. I want you to think this morning. What would we learn? Look at me. What would we learn about God and his faithfulness and his goodness if we were to look at your life? Would your life be a cautionary tale of what you don't do? Or would you be a faithful example that God could say, look at Joel, look at Jeff, look at Miss Linda, look at Miss Janet. This is what a faithful life looks like. They're showing you an example that's worthy of following. I want to encourage you, be a godly example like Joseph was. He had a lot asked of him. For us, we think, wow, he's special. He gets to be the father to the Son of God here on earth. And yet when you look at it, there's nothing easy about it. He was asked to do a lot of hard things. There's a lot put on him. And all we see over and over again is he got up, he woke up. In the middle of the night, he gets his family and goes to Egypt. Faithfulness to God without questioning God and doing what God said. A godly example. As you think about this Christmas season, I want you to hopefully remember and think about the faithfulness of Joseph and what an example it is for us to follow. And ask us to bow our heads and close our eyes. I'm going to pray. Do business with God if you need. Father, God, you have examples of people in the Bible for us to learn from. You could just put words on a page, but so often we have lives to look at. And Lord, Joseph is one of those. So Father, help us to be people that are of high character like he was. Father, help us to be people that are obedient, that don't argue with you, but that trust you and are faithful to you by faith, even when we don't know how things are going to work out, even though we don't have the answers for the future. God, when we have instructions to obey, God, help us to obey those. Lord, help us to be a church that obeys you, that lives for you, that is a godly example in our community, in our world. We love you. God, thank you for the truth of your word this morning. In your name we pray. Amen.